Hi all, and welcome to this week's edition of Straight Talk with Bren O'Brien and Tim Rowe from The Straight, brought to you by our sponsors, Darley and Inglis, who both feature prominently on today's edition. Today, we talk stallion fees, and a raft of farms announced their fees for the 2025 season. Arvin Chadee from Darley joins us to chat through their pricing. We also talk to Inglis Harry Barley about the upcoming breeding sale series, the HWA sale, and also the digital sale. And we also discuss the end of an era for breeder Greg Perry. Tim and I reflect on an in-depth discussion with Chris Waller on Straight Talk earlier this week. In racing, the future of Peter V'landys is in the spotlight, while on track, our attention turns west to the Quokka. And in wagering, as the bookies tighten odds of a federal election win for Labor, so too do the odds of wagering ad reform shorten. Tim, welcome. You've had a very busy couple of weeks, as you never cease to tell me. Keeping up with the latest stallion fee announcements. What has surprised you and what hasn't with what we've seen so far with the fees that have been announced?
I think even with the elite stallions, Rich Hill announced their stallion fees this morning at the time of recording. You know, they brought Priceer and Satono Aladdin down just a touch, particularly Priceer. John Thompson probably didn't need to, but he wanted to be seen to helping the breeders, even though he says, you know, breeders will still do overwhelmingly well at 70,000, he believes. But, you know, sometimes an Easter sale can overshadow sort of the market, and you get a picture of what the market is very strong when actually you've got to take it the year as a whole, and there are difficult patches or tricky patches of the market, particularly the lower end. And the studs want to be seen to be helping those breeders stay in the game. I know Yarraman hasn't announced their fees yet, but I believe they're, wanting the rising costs of production are forefront of their minds and all the studs' minds, I think. And so when you do either leave the stallion where they at the fee they were or gone up, in Ole Kirk's case at Binary, you have to be, you really want to be kicking a lot of goals to do that, I think, just given the way the market is at the moment.
Yeah. And it is interesting time. As you said, most of the proven type stallions, like if you look at Widden, for example, I think 10 of their 20 stallions have had a reduction in price, and that's not necessarily based on performance. That's based upon the fact that the market has to adjust. The big boys, we're talking about Zoostar, for example, 275,000. He stays at that level. Ole Kirk is an interesting case in point. He's likely to be the champion first season stallion, and we've seen a suite of these stallions, Too Darn Hot. Other stallions come out now to sort of have these sort of significant price rises. They've earned it, but for me, there perhaps seems to be a little bit of, I want to say mayonnaise. You obviously got to cash in when your horses are performing well, your sires are performing well. But it does seem like these young sires are accelerating at quite a strong rate when you compare them to some of the proven sires that they're up against in terms of the choices breeders must make, Tim.
I think that, Bren, that's because there is, as we've discussed a lot, and we touch on with Arvin later on, is that there is that void in the middle, of the next stallions to come through to replace I'm Invincible, Written Tycoon, and Snitzel. So every time one comes through, they possibly look like they might make it, and they haven't at this stage. Where Ole Kirk looks like the next one, I think there's enough depth to his runners to suggest that he can go on with it, but time will tell, of course. But he's popular at the moment to be booked out at 90,000 plus.
And we're lucky enough to have Arvin Chadee here from Darley to join us to discuss their roster. Arvin, thanks for your time. A big time of year, stallion announcements, and an exciting couple of additions for Darley over the last few weeks.
Thanks for having me, Bren and Tim. It's a pleasure to be on the straight. No, it's been an amazing week being able to launch Traffic Warden and Broadside into the 2025 Darley roster here at Kelvinside. Two exceptional stallions, both well credentialed, and we've been absolutely flooded with interest for both.
Let's start with broadsiding. A couple of years ago, you had Animo to go onto the roster, and now broadsiding, another elite horse that hopefully can go on and do it. You must be, from a team point of view, really excited to have a horse of his caliber on the roster.
Absolutely, Tim. You touched on Animo. In my time here at Darley, we've launched Champion Sprinter, Bivouac, one of the most successful racehorse to ever run in the Royal Blue, Animo. And then you just think it can't get any better. And then you have a horse like Broadside and come along, Champion 2-year-old, dual Group 1 winning 2-year-old, and then dual Group 1 winning 3-year-old. The team behind the Darley Stallions from Woodlands and Norfolk Park to then the racing stable with James Cummins. They do an incredible job, and we're very lucky that every year we get to introduce horses of this caliber.
Broadsiding himself, from a racing fan, I'm sure we would have, well, personally and more generally, people would have perhaps liked to have seen him race on at 4 and see what he could do. Was there much debate between the racing side and the stallion side of Godolphin and the business?
Absolutely. Every stallion, potential stallion colt, it's always an interesting debate whether these horses train on to their 4-year-old career or retire at 3. With Broadsiding, it was decided that he'd achieved everything that we envisaged he would achieve, but plus more. And we felt it was probably the right time to introduce him, especially being the first and only son of Two Darn Hot to be standing at stud. It's a great feather in Darley Australia's cap to be able to do that, considering he is a fantastic shuttle stallion. So we just felt Broadsiding's time had probably come to start his new career.
Does Broadsiding's not the only one? Traffic Warden, who he was very good horse, but unlucky in some big races. What can you tell us about him?
He's the most magnificent specimen. He is a beautiful horse. On the day of the Everest, he was actually pick of the yard. The way he commanded the parade ring with some of the world's best sprinters was something to behold. He's just a magnificent looking animal, but he backed it up on the race course. He was a Group 2 winning 2-year-old. That day, he was just peerless at Flemington in the Sire's Produce. And then he ran an incredible race in the Golden Slipper to finish 4th. He was fastest finishing that year. And, with a bit more luck, had he been a bit broken, a bit sharper, he probably would have been even closer, dare I say, even win it. He was fantastic on his day. And then in his next start, he backed that up by finishing in a photo a second by nose to Manal in the Group 1 Sire's Produce. There was only centimeters in it that day. So he backed up his incredible run in the Slipper by only being beaten in a photo. And then, back in those days, there was not much between Broadside and Traffic Warden. There were our standout 2-year-olds and there were going to be our standout 3-year-olds. Traffic Warden proved that by winning the Run to the Rose, beating a very, very strong field that included Switzerland, Linebacker, Storm Boy, and he put them all to the sword that day at Rose Hill. And then, the day of the Golden Rose, you couldn't pick between the two of the Godolphin colts in Broadside and Traffic Warden, and Traffic Warden ran an absolute blinder to only go down a short head to Broadside in. So he's a Group 1 perform horse. He was, like you said, incredibly unlucky not to have landed a Group 1. But in terms of what the commercial Australian breeding market demands physically, he's the type of horse you want to take to a sale. He's a commercial home run, and I feel Darley have priced him extremely competitively, and I think he's been really well received, equally so to Broadsiding.
When you've got Animo, we've discussed with Alistair Pulford recently about his prospects and the quality of mares he's had, but you've also got a host of other sort of, I guess, with respect, lower profile stallions in that sort of unproven 2nd, 3rd, 4th season. Horses like Paul Laley and Victor Ledurum, and even a horse like Kermadec, who is grossly underrated in my opinion. How do you guys ensure, given the profile of it, of a Two Darn Hot coming back and a Broadsiding and a Traffic Warden and even Animo, that these stallions are getting the quality of books that they need to be successful and give them the best chance going forward?
We're very fortunate here at Darley. We have a great loyal base of clients, and Darley has built up a brand over all these years of producing successful stallions. Our brand is synonymous with champions like Exceed and Excel, Street Cry, Two Darn Hot in most recent time, and then stallions that are guaranteed to get you Saturday winners, Group 1 winners like your Brazen Bows and your Kermadecs. So that really helps us in being able to get mares to the stallions outside of your Broadsidings and your Traffic Wardens. This year alone, Street Bosses had a Group 1 winner, another Group 1 winner. Brazen Bows had another Group 1 winner. We're very fortunate that our stallions continually perform on the big Saturday meetings at your Flemingtons, Randwicks, in the big Group 1 stakes races where it matters most. And whenever you look at a field or you check results on Saturday evening, there's always gluttony of Darley stallions well represented. And that's what helps us with the stallions.
It seems to be like, probably Darley over the last few years with Exceed and Excel and Lonro sort of being pensioned and moving on, that it was a little bit of a changing of the guard per se, but obviously you've got these, there's wealth of exciting stallions coming through. It's your sort of view of the broader Australian market. It does seem to mirror the broader Australian market. We've got some very successful, experienced stallions who are in their 20s at the moment, who are still sort of, moving along there. We've probably got 1 or 2 stars in the middle proven range, but there seems to be a real sort of surge of young emerging stallions that are surging up both in terms of success, but also even the sci-fi rankings in terms of where they sit at the moment, Arvin. I mean, does it feel to you like there is a little bit of a changing of the guard?
Absolutely. If you look at our roster, it's probably emblematic of what you've just described there, Brent. You've got your new young gun superstar stallion in Two Darn Hot, and then you've got your proven older guard in Street Boss. I mean, Street Boss this year, 2 of the best juveniles in Tentaris and Tempted. And then obviously Two Darn Hot, as the new, taking over the baton from Street Boss. And then just below that, you've got Harry Angel, who I feel is extremely well priced considering the year he's had in the sales ring and the race course with Private Harry, Stretton Angel, Tom Kitten. He's now the youngest stallion in the top 10 size list. And, he could easily command a significantly higher fee, but will with some of the bullets he's got to find a few years time, he probably will. And then you've got your younger stallions coming through with their first 2-year-old runners like Pinatubo, who sold extremely well. And if they're anything like him as juveniles, they're going to be fast, they're going to be early, they're going to be elite. So I agree, there is a bit of a changing of the guard, and our roster very much is emblematic of that shift now in the Australasian stallion market.
But it's not just the Darley roster that's on the rise. You've earned a promotion as well yourself in recent months, and there's been a lot of change and going on at Godolphin and Darley in Australia the last 18 months since Finn Cox left. But I guess possibly a wise decision. You could have moved into journalism. I think Bren even mentored you at one stage, and you're at Racing Post, but you've possibly made a wise decision to go down the career route you have.
Oh no, Tim, I'm very fortunate. I had a lot of fun with Bren when I was at Kick. He really did help me, and then that's actually how I took my first leap post flying start into the Racing Post, and that was a phenomenal experience. But I just love the racing and bloodstock side of it, and the opportunity at Darley came, and it was just too tempting to not jump for it. So I'm very lucky in that respect, and I've come at a great time. Like we touched on earlier, I've come when we've had Bivouac retire, Anima retire, Cylinder retire, Broadside in retire, and then the shuttlers that we've introduced, like Native Trail Champion 2-year-old, Pinatubo, the highest rated 2-year-old in my lifetime, in many people's lifetime. I've come at a fantastic time, and I'm very lucky, and it's not lost on me with some of the elite bloodstock I get to represent.
Arvin, thank you so much for your time on Straight Talk, and we'll catch up with you along the way.
Thank you so much, Bren. Thank you so much, Tim.
And we're lucky enough to have Harry Barley with us from Inglis to discuss what is a very busy time for the sales company. 4 separate traditional sales plus a digital sale in the next fortnight. It's certainly a busy time, Harry. You guys have got focuses on a lot of different places at the moment. And I guess, how do you guys prepare for this time of year? You come off the back of Easter, which is obviously an enormous time of year, and you're sort of very quickly into digital sale, HTBA, we've got the Weanling sale, Chairman's and Broodmare sale, all within the next sort of 15 days.
Yeah, no respite whatsoever. But obviously the Easter sale is a fantastic result, and I suppose it gives you a huge amount of impetus to get straight back on the phones and get in touch with people. Obviously with the HTBA sale, the Weanlings and the Mares. I mean, it's obviously these are relationships we've developed with across buyers and sellers for a long time, and it's not just in the weeks leading up to the sale that you're speaking to these people. You're canvassing buyers, especially for the breeding stock sales from a long way in advance, really.
Harry, on the digital sale, I guess I did see the email yesterday that it is, get your entries in early. It just seems to be a phenomenon that just keeps, so much trades being done digitally and, more entries than space available, it seems, at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the April late sale has typically been a sale where it's probably the first breeding stock sale in inverted commas of the year. A lot of broodmare vendors like to target this sale, get in ahead of the traditional breeding stock sales. And we're obviously capping the sale. We've got over 540 lots in the sale. And we've got a share in the sale includes a share in Zoostar, who's obviously potentially going to be crowned leading stallion this season. We've also got the Dam of North England in foal to stay inside, a Group 1 winner in foal to Ole Kirk. So there's plenty of opportunity to buy good quality broodmares. But there's also obviously the racing section as well. And there's a 3-year-old capitalist gelding who won by over 4.5 lengths last start, and he's fully vetted for Hong Kong. So there's opportunity there for everyone, really. And it's going obviously gangbusters at the moment.
Just Harry, just interesting to that, because you would have thought this time of year we might have been a little bit quieter on the digital side of things, with so much going on in the with the yearling sales season obviously still rattling along, and we've got breeding sales coming up, and there's a lot still going on. So it's quite interesting that this digital market continues to sort of go continue to have that strong momentum and that strong.
Well, I suppose for many vendors, the timing is important, especially if you just suddenly had an update in a pedigree. You can you can offer a horse for market straight away. Also, the costs are very low. It's very convenient. It's stress-free on the mare as well. And in many cases, it's a free shot at the stumps, relatively speaking. Entry fees are very low. And there's no cost on pass-on commissions. So if you have a good quality product, why not have a go? I mean, that'd certainly be the mantra I'd be encouraging people anyway.
Moving on to the weanling sale, I think it's your biggest Sydney weanling sale catalogue that you've put together over the years. How's that shaping up? And particularly pinhookers is a big driving factor of that. How's the pinhooking market going to be looking, you think?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, 574 lots. So it's going to be a big sale. Obviously, a huge amount of work has gone into it from the team. We have to thank the vendors massively for supporting us. The pinhook market, look, I mean, this sale, pinhookers have had a lot of success from. I mean, only last year alone, I was going through some of the results earlier. I mean, some of the results are outstanding. 60,000 into 400,000, 25,000 into 240, 150 into 420. That was just from last year alone into this year's yearling sales. Look, the market's going to be strong for the right product, like it always is. Type and pedigree always sell well, and there's going to be opportunity at the lower end of the market. At the end of the day, this catalogue is full of stallion diversity. There's 107 individual stallions represented. So, if you're coming to find a horse to pinhook, you've got the likes of Two Dime, Hot Fun, and Ole Kirk of the Younger Brigade. And then you've got established stallions like Snitzel, Frankel, I'm Invincible, Zoostar. So there's a lot of diversity, a lot of opportunity there. The market will be strong for the right horse, but there'll also be plenty of opportunity as well.
I think it's not saying safer. It's a very hard thing to do, pinhooking for a living, or even playing in it. Strong ticker, I guess. But, probably a couple of years ago, off the peak of the market, people were buying foals at, peak of the market and then selling in a declining market. That's quite difficult, where who knows what will happen next year. But maybe like for like market, buying and then selling into. Does that make it a little bit easier perhaps for those pinhookers?
I suppose there's always an element of risk when you're buying a product, especially a premium product. But I think, as we've noticed over the last couple of years, premium products tend to hold their value really well. So if you're buying at the top end of the market and you're selling into the top end of the market, that's the market, or the end of the market, which is least disrupted from any variances. You saw how Easter stood up this year. And so, providing things go in your favor, I suppose you're trying to mitigate as many risks as possible. But stallion power, type, and you get a bit of luck along the way, and you can have a great result. We're actually doing a seminar here at the complex on the Sunday before the weanling sale. We'll have a panel of some pinhookers and some vets. So anyone who's looking to get a bit of an insight, more than welcome to come along to that as well. It's on this Sunday night.
Eric, talk to us about the HPA sale and what can you expect out of that on Sunday. It's obviously a pretty busy time. There's a lot of opportunities there in the yielding market this time of year to get a quality yielding at a pretty good price.
Yeah, so that's our first live sale of the next 2 weeks. I mean, it's 299 lots. Over 80% of them are Bob's eligible there. And we've got yearlings by the likes of Snitzel, Wootton Bassett, Farnan, Tudon, Hot, Ole Kirk, Castelvecchio. So there's very good stallion power. Like recent stakes winners from the sale who've cost 30 grand or less include Tintuki, Rocketing Bayern and Bopper. And interestingly, between them all, they amassed over 3.8 million in prize money. So as you can see, there's great value to be had at this sale. All of the horses are eligible for the Inglis Race Series, and that includes the $5 million Inglis Extra Maiden Series. So if you've got an order to buy or you're still looking for a horse, there's going to be excellent value here. Strongly recommend you to come along. And it's a day's sale, and look, feel free to get in touch with us if you need any information on any of the lots.
I'm moving on to chairman's and the mayor's sale more generally. How are you seeing that playing out? Obviously, there's the Stallion fees are being announced at the moment. Stallion's off the track. Some high-profile ones like Broadsiding in Switzerland and some others as well, and Ole Kirk on the up. That tends to be a big driver of the mare market, doesn't it? Is that again going to be the case this year at Chairman's, online, and Australian Broodmare Sale?
Yeah, we certainly think so. And, we do a lot of work ensuring we try and get in front of people who are involved in these stallion syndicates to promote mares that might suit them. And we'll also be doing some work with G1 Goldmine across our broodmare sales, who will also provide analysis for stallions, including the new stallions. So I suppose anyone who's got a share or a breeding right in a stallion can go through our breeding stock sales and catalogs and use that analysis to help match a mare for them. Obviously, it's 2 fantastic days of sale. The chairman sales come together exceptionally well. I mean, the quality is by far and away the best we've ever put together. I mean, just to give you an idea, of the 95 catalogued, 70 are either stakes winners or stakes producing mares. So the quality is pretty unbelievable. Obviously, you've got the likes of Bella Nipotina, Tudon Lizzie, Amelia's Jewel, I Am Me. But there's plenty of mares in the middle market there who appeal to a vast array of buyers. So that there is something there for everyone.
Harry, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, a very busy time for you guys, but there seems to be an ounce of positivity or a strength aspect of positivity in the market at the moment. And I'm sure that will probably help you carry through some good results over the next couple of weeks.
We hope so. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Harry.
Tim, off the back of those couple of discussions, I also wanted to touch on an interview you did with breeder Greg Perry yesterday. It's on the straight at the moment. He's the man behind Group 1 winners of Ristia, Morabi, and I think Artorius as well, Tim. He's got a terrific record, but he's downsizing and offloading his stock and the upcoming breeding sales. Talk us through that, and I guess your conversation with Greg about, for a guy that has had a terrific reputation, it seems to be like he's sort of, dropping out of the game.
I've spoken to Greg before, and I always find him fascinating. He doesn't court the media. He doesn't particularly, but he did speak. He goes, "Oh, please don't say this or that or whatever." And then he proceeds to speak to 12 minutes and really insightful. As I said, I really enjoy talking to Greg. And he's successful fund manager and through the 90s, 80s and 90s and early 2000s, when he attacks something, he does it properly. He wants to be hands-on, and that's why he's a bit like Rick Jamieson. He's got his mating theories. He doesn't leave it to someone else. And he's bred, Artoriuses and horses like that by, sort of out less than conventional thinking, I guess, or matings. And so now he doesn't have a bit like Peter Walsh from Amelia's Jewel. He doesn't have the family coming through with the interest in terms of, his kids having that real drive and wanting to continue it on. So he's, over the last few years, he's been selling his mares slowly. Morabi sold for 2.4 million, I think it was, last year to Arrowfield. Now he's got a Ristra at the Gold Coast, in file to Survive Invincible, I think. So, he's just slowly selling. He didn't want to have just a rush dispersal sale. He's just slowly exiting the industry. He still loves it. But as he said, at one stage he was waking up thinking about horses and going to bed thinking about horses. That's not the case now. He's got a grandchild and different other things on his mind. And so he's just sort of not, making it all encompassing sort of part of his life.
Tim, we'll move on to racing now, and I did want to touch on the Straight Talk podcast, which we published out early this week, a special edition one, the one from Chris Waller, which is pretty much Chris Waller speaking for 18 minutes about the way he deals with pressure and I guess the ups and downs of being Australia's most successful trainer of the past decade. What did you take out of it, Tim? Having listened back through that, it was a fascinating listen. I had a lot of great feedback around it. Well, what did you learn about Chris Waller that you probably didn't know beforehand?
First of all, I'd like to give credit to Matt Stewart. Obviously, he's got a rapport or a trust built up with Chris to enable Chris to feel comfortable to talk like that, and then allow Chris allow us to put it up for everyone to hear that he's such a deep thinker. He cares. It would be easy being so successful that you would just move on to the next horse, but he does, rangy rang do. The fact that he prays for horses, I'm not religious, but if that makes him feel better about life, he will. That was fascinating. Just the way he's so deep thinking.
Yeah, he's a fascinating character, Chris Waller, and again, Matt's relationship was able to elicit that out, but we did thank Chris for taking that time to talk about that and then allowing us to use that as a podcast, which is probably something we didn't plan to do, Tim, but sometimes you've got to think on your feet in this business. Speaking about thinking on your feet, there's been considerable attention this week on the future of Peter V'landys as Racing New South Wales CEO. There's been a series of articles in the Australian Financial Review. We've obviously been covering some of the challenges or the questions around Racing New South Wales, the New South Wales racing industry for the past 18 months since we launched. And I guess, we don't pretend that we quite get the cut through and the mainstream that a financial review might get. But it's interesting to do that. That also comes off the back that there's a letter from 27 concerned stakeholders urging Racing Minister David Harris in New South Wales to expedite a review of the Thoroughbred Racing Act. What was interesting about that, Tim, from my perspective, is that there was no names mentioned in that. There was no personalities mentioned. It wasn't about that. But it doesn't take long in this game to become about personalities. And it's clear that those who would like to see change at Racing New South Wales and would like to see Peter V'landys depart that role after 21 years are seeing an opportunity here to wedge things a little bit and try to make things happen. I've written an analysis article, which is up on the Straight at the moment, which sort of points to the fact that if they think they're going to get that to happen easily, they've probably got another thing coming, because V'landys is determined to pursue his legacy. Now, there is language coming out of what V'landys is talking about, which would indicate that he is thinking about whether it's focusing on rugby league permanently or focusing on moving away from racing. There is that's been probably about for the last couple of months, and whether the end of this year might be a natural point for him. But a really interesting time within that one. I think the person who decides if PVL will leave will be PVL, regardless of what happens with the Thoroughbred Racing Act and all this sort of stuff. And we know from everything they've experienced over the last 18 months that the wheels of politics take a long time to move. And David Harris, the racing minister, will be probably well advised. Well, not well advised, but it would not surprise if he takes his time on this review, because racing politics can be quite deadly when it comes to other politics. Tim, the other thing I wanted to mention from a racing perspective was the Quokka, the Western Australian race, rich Western Australian race to be run this week. I mean, how do you feel like it's been received as a concept? Do you feel like, obviously with Overpass dominate the race the last 2 years, he's even money favourite to do the same thing again. Do you think it's captured the public imagination the way they would have hoped over there?
Well, I was lucky enough to go to the first one when Overpass knocked off Amelia's Jewel, much to the chagrin of the local punters and WA fans. And that was a huge day. Obviously, wasn't there last year, but I've been to some summer carnival or Pinnacles meetings as well, Group 1 days, Northerlies and so forth. And the Quokka was right up there. The atmosphere was fantastic. Maybe, I don't know whether it's maintained quite year one, but even if it hasn't, it's still, I think it's a great race day for WA. Eastern States engaged. I think this year's race will be really interesting with Overpass, front page potentially making Overpass at least work a little bit, front page outside the lead, most likely. So, no, I think it'll be a really interesting race. It's engaging. Yeah, I think it works for WA.
Yeah, and it's an interesting time of year, of course, with clashes with the Group 1 racing in South Australia. And I do find it a little bit disappointing, is probably not the right word, but a bit unfortunate that, we're starting up the Adelaide Carnival with Group 1 racing this weekend, they sort of clash, but it's just the way that it works. There's not only a set amount of space in the calendar, and the Quokka's found its space within that, and as I said, it's attracted some good Eastern State interest Headwall's been terrific this campaign and also go to the race as well. So we'll watch that one with interest over the weekend, Tim. All right, we'll move on to the wagering world now. And the federal election is only just over a week away. Not something we necessarily cover here at the Straight, but it does obviously have implications on the advertising and wagering aspects and the legislation around that moving forward. The Albanese government did not put any additional restrictions on wagering advertising in the wake of the You Win Some, You Lose More report, which was released a couple of years ago now. They held off on that. It's now emerged that the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, made a captain's call himself on that to say we don't want to, basically they don't want to pick that fight with, media companies, wagering companies and sports bodies in the lead up to an election. However, and this is a good however, at this stage it looks like Labor will retain power, Tim. It looks they're $1.20 favourites. I know these markets aren't always spot on, but at $1.20 you'd think they were, that's probably, pretty much where they are. They're also about even money to form a minority government. What that would mean is that the greatest critics of the government in this whole, I guess, inaction on wagering review or wagering, change of wagering legislation or advertising legislation have been the crossbenchers. And they're likely to be the same crossbenchers that the Labor government or the Labor Party will have to deal with in order to retain power. So with that in mind, and just with a sort of a bit of a thought around that, I think we'll probably see significant wagering advertising changes early in this next electoral term, so probably this year. There was a Labor Party MP this week who said his greatest disappointment of this term was that they didn't achieve that. Of course, in the legacy of the late Peter Murphy, the Labor MP who unfortunately passed away, but was a key part of this as well. There is a real sense within Labor, but also within the crossbench, that this will come straight onto the parliamentary agenda. So we're likely to see changes within that, and whether they're the changes that have been mooted forward by the Communication Minister, Michelle Rowland, or whether they go further or not, we'll have to see. But we'll still be talking about this for some time to come, Tim. All right, thanks for joining us on Straight Talk, brought to you by Inglis and Darley. Thank our great sponsors for their support, but also lending us a couple of people to chat to today, and Harry Barley and Arvin Chadee, both great chats and really incisive, insightful chats moving forward. Don't forget to give us a rating wherever you're listening to us on our podcast. You'll be listening on Apple, Spotify, Podbean. We're on YouTube as well for those who want to catch sight of the bright orange shirts and, see Tim and I in live, I suppose. So make sure you give us a rating. What's that, Tim?
That's quite unnecessary. Audio is fine, but anyway, if there's someone out there, good luck to them.
There was a period about 45 minutes ago we thought this would be an audio-only podcast, but Tim managed to find his camera, so we're all good. But we'll talk to you again next week. Always happy to chat. Send us an email, editor@straight.com.au. Any subjects, any interview subjects you think we'd like to cover, anything else. Thanks for your time. We'll talk to you again soon.